Good morning. This is Bill from Auto Europa Naples on a rather muggy Florida Friday. You know, for the middle of winter, again, it sucks. We're getting highs in the mid to high 80s, which is just absolutely unacceptable. We've got some sort of a front blowing through today that's going to put it down into the low 80s. Yeah, that's wonderful. Fantastic. But anyway, what the hell? So it's another winter we're getting robbed of. You know what, I'm not even going to talk about the weather. I will say that we're bird-free today, so we've at least got that going for us. The birds have probably escaped to cooler climates. The roosters down at the end of the road, haven't seen them for a while, so on the bird front, we're doing pretty good. And today I have a review of this, well, what the hell would you call it? Okay, theoretically, it's a 1957 Porsche Speedster Replica. In truth, it's a replica based on a 1967 Beetle. In fact, maybe the biggest issue with owning this car is this. Anytime you take it anywhere, anytime you park it, anytime you put gas in it, some nitwit is going to come up to you and ask you if it's real. And, to that you can devise your own answer. You can say, no, it's a hologram. It's just something we came up with to sort of present the image of a Beetle replica Porsche driving around. Or you can say, yes, it's real. Or, there's a variety of different things you can do. But it's an annoying question, and it never stops coming. A good friend of mine built a Cobra kit car, something else we'll mention in this little review, and he gets the same issue. In fact, he's such a, he's already the kind of guy who hates attention anyway, and he had to stop driving the thing. Now he just looks at it in his garage because he's just sick to death of the questions over that car. So do yourself a favor. If you see one of these things or one of the Cobras out of the street, the chances of it being real, in other words, an authentic Cobra or an authentic Speedster, are about 1 in 12 billion. So, unless you happen to be at some sort of Concours d'Elegance show or, the Amelia Island or, Barrett Jackson. So forget it. If it's out on the street, somebody's putting gas in it, it's obviously going to be a replica, so just go with it that way. This one belongs to a guy named Larry. He's a good friend of mine, great guy, very nice guy. He is a Naples shell magnate. At some stage, Larry brilliantly realized that people who come to vacation in Naples, they might want seashells, but the last thing they want to do is go to the actual beach to get them. They would much rather pay for what is essentially free at a shop somewhere, instead of going out and picking them up on their own. So, and Larry goes out, he gets shells. I don't know, he buys them out the back of a truck somewhere. I think they come from, the Thailand or Gestad or Venezuela, puts them out on a shelf with a ridiculous markup, and these people come down and they buy the things, and it has caused Larry to have incredible success. In fact, he's starting to come up with a company to rival SpaceX. I think he's going to have a competitor to Elon Musk. Maybe not that, but anyway, just like people who sell bottled water to other people, and Larry sells seashells, this free item to people, and it works. And it has bought for him this Speedster. And I had it stored for a while because Larry's getting a house where he's going to store it, but he needed to put it somewhere. So I thought, man, as long as I've got this thing sitting here, I'm going to put it up on YouTube because I actually genuinely love it. And I'll get into why. This one is made by a company called Vintage Speedsters, and what makes them a little bit different from some of the other ones is that they don't sell kits to people. So some nitwit in his garage isn't going to put this thing together and drive it around in a haphazard manner. This is built by a factory, by people who are trained to build them, and then delivered to the people who have ordered them with whatever options they see fit. And that's how, look at this, just covered with prints, and oh God, I should have cleaned it up better. Anyway, so this one is sort of hand factory built and then sent to people, and Larry didn't order it from them directly. He got it, he found it on Auto Trader. He'd been searching for one for a while, and this thing came up. It was apparently owned by a local new car dealer, the Galloways. They own a bunch of stuff everywhere. And, it was bought by the father for the son. The father thought, wow, that's really neat. There's something cool that I'll never use. And it just sat in their garage. It had like 200 miles on it for like 5 years until they put it up for sale and Larry bought it. Got a pretty good deal on it. And one of the things you rarely see are black ones. You see them in white, you see them in red, you see them all over the place, but you don't see too many black. And that's one of the things that I think this car, what makes it neat. It is very true to the design of the original Speedster. Obviously, it's made out of fiberglass instead of, well, first they made them out of aluminum, not exactly this Speedster, but a different one. And then they made them out of steel. So that's, immediately. Here's what you do. When you see one at a gas station, go up and knock on the fender with your knuckle. Knock on it pretty hard. See how that works for the guy who's putting gas in it. And then you'll be able to distinguish if it's a real one and not a fake one. If it sounds like metal, it's real, and you're going to be dealing with one really angry cat. Even if it's fiberglass, you'll probably also be dealing with one really angry cat. So, yeah, go ahead and do that. Anyway, so this one is fiberglass. It's factory built, and it's put, of course, on a Volkswagen chassis. And that is part of what makes these things to me so great, is because the original Speedsters were basically put on a Volkswagen chassis. So as a replica car, as a kit car, they are incredibly true to the original. In fact, if you're looking at a 57 Speedster, which by that time Porsche did have all kinds of little add-ons to the Volkswagen motor. They were making their own cases at that point, heads. They had a 4-cam thing going. But even so, 12 years later, the VW engines probably had the same horsepower. The frame is essentially the same. The sound is the same. The transmission is essentially the same. And you get to have a very authentic replica Speedster, with very little fuss and muss, that's very true to the original and gives you much of what the original style was all about. All right, so Ferdinand Porsche, interesting guy, born in 1875 in Bohemia to a guy who pounded out sheet metal for a living. Very quickly got into engineering, very gifted guy, got into electrics. In fact, he built the world's first gas-electric hybrid. So Toyota has Ferdinand Porsche to thank him for the hybrid. He got drafted into military service in 1902 and was the chauffeur for the Archduke Ferdinand, the guy whose assassination later led to World War I. So that was a brief little. Ferdinand had a lot of little run-ins with history over the course of his life. But anyway, after that, he went back out. He became named the greatest engineer, car engineer, won all kinds of awards. Eventually got drafted by Hitler to build the Volkswagen Beetle, the people's car. And here's kind of a little-known fact that Volkswagen would rather you didn't know. They had to settle a lawsuit with a company called the Tatra. The Tatra 570, if you look at the pictures of that thing, which came out before the Beetle, looked very suspiciously like the Beetle, down to the point of having those little bolt-on fenders and an air-cooled rear engine. And in fact, after the war, after things got figured out, VW did have to pay Tatra a settlement for essentially robbing their design. So not even the Beetle is sacred anymore. It's just kind of sad. But anyway, Porsche had a lot to do with the Beetle. He also became an SS Oberfuhrer during the war. There's some debate as to what kind of forced labor he was using to build his military vehicles for Hitler. He did a prototype of a Tiger tank that didn't work, and then he built some other kind of a tank that did work. And apparently there was a bunch of guys in his factory with the letter P on their shirts, which stood not for Porsche, but for Poland. And those guys weren't paid very well. In fact, they were paid nothing at all, and did have a lot of work to do to keep those things rolling. So in 45, he was, this all gets very convoluted. Ferdinand and another guy named Anton Pike, one of his buddies, and his kid, Ferry Porsche, were all called to France to help develop the Beetle after the war. And instead of developing the Beetle, they were just immediately arrested for war crimes. Ferry, he got out pretty quick, but Anton and Ferdinand, they had to answer a lot of stuff. They were never never really tried or anything, but they did have to answer some questions. But for 22 years, they were held as war criminals. 22 years, Jesus. 22 months they were held as war criminals until they got out and came back. And you could tell it took a toll, I guess, on Ferdinand, because at that stage, Ferry basically had to take over the development of the Porsche car company and move it forward. And Ferdinand, in fact, died of a stroke in '51. He never really recovered from it, and it was just kind of sad. Anyway, so Ferry Porsche had driven a supercharged VW Cabriolet, you know, in wartime, and loved the idea of a small car with good horsepower and great handling. And that is what they decided to start developing. So they built what was called the 356, and that is a car that became extremely famous and very collectible today. Another guy named Max Hoffman, he was an American importer. He's famous for bringing cars to the country and, in fact, helping to develop them, such as the 300 SL Gullwing, the BMW 507. He went to Porsche and said, look, Americans are going to want a lightweight, chop-top version of this 356 that can be used for racing on the weekends. So Porsche came up with an aluminum-bodied thing called the Continental America or something, which Lincoln immediately sued them over, so they didn't get to do that. They also lost money on every one they sold, so it didn't work out because it was an overcomplicated hand-built aluminum thing. But a couple years later, they decided to base it on the production 356, and the 356 Speedster was born, and here it is. And it was a roaring success. Max Hoffman brought him over to his, showroom in the United. I think he was on Park Avenue, and he had like a Frank Lloyd Wright showroom. He's a pretty cool cat, really was. And anyway, they sold like hotcakes, especially in Southern California, where people raced them on weekends. And, the 356 sold well. And, of course, then we go on to the rest of Porsche history, where all the purists just became giant dickwads and, directed the development of the 911 pretty much from the beginning onward. But the Speedster was a very special moment in time and is a very, very cool car. And the replicas, to me, are incredibly faithful to those and an incredible joy to drive. I mean, if you want something really outside the box, but that's simple, elegant, easy to maintain, fun to be seen in, you really can't go wrong with a well-built Speedster kit like this one. And again, this one isn't for sale. Larry wouldn't part with it at gunpoint. He just absolutely loves this thing. But they are out there. There's real fancy ones, companies like Intermechanica and Beck. They build very expensive ones. There's companies like this, Vintage Speedsters, that, also have fairly, sort of mid-grade expensive, and then getting down into the stuff that comes in a box and you have to put together. When Larry got this thing, it didn't have those rock guards on the headlights. I installed those for him. It was a pain in the ass. Also, the Porsche emblem on the front, another pain in the ass that I put on. Here's an interesting thing. Porsche hired this company, what the hell is the name of it again? Reuter, to build the body for these cars, another company out of Stuttgart. Later on, they went on to buy them, every part of them except the seat production part, which Reuter kept, and then went on to be named Recaro, another company you might have heard of. So it's amazing how all these little things happened. Anyway, so they built these bodies, and there it is. Now, I put on the hubcap. When the thing came, it didn't have these hubcaps on. And if you want to know what rage is, what rage and anger is, try putting a reproduction hubcap on a reproduction wheel made by two different companies, probably in China or the Philippines, and see how it fits for you. It did not fit well for me, to the point that I just took a friggin' hammer. It was rubber coated, but it still did damage, and I beat the shit out of the hubcaps until they went on the car. In fact, they may never come off. I hope we don't have to change a wheel. But they got on there. I was sweating, I was miserable, but I did get them on, and it was a real pain in the ass. We also put the emblems on the back. There was all that, I don't know what you call it, the copyright crap. I'm sure you can't put Porsche logos on it, or Porsche's going to come after you, so you have to be the end user doing that. The Speedster itself, it had this little shitty weather top, you know, which was kind of useless other than an emergency downpour. You could put it up. You know, Larry and I have put it up a couple of times, but it really is quite difficult to use, and this thing just mostly lives indoors and comes out on nice days. Inside, you're not going to see much difference between these and the original Speedsters when it comes to the dashboard, the instrumentation, the steering wheel. Love the cocoa mats in that one. I just ordered a set for my Datsun, and it's like the last real personal service company in the United States. They didn't, I tell you what, I've been trying to have fun with this Datsun, this 300ZX. It's not a rare car, but it's a car that history has forgotten. Everybody's forgotten. So, like, you can't even order a brake caliper for it. I might as well own a Bizzarini. You know, you have to fabricate everything by hand if you want to drive this thing. And I ordered a set of cocoa mats for it, and even those guys didn't really have the right pattern. They had to send me a template that I then put in the car to see if it fit, and it did. And then I sent it back to them, and they're going to make them for me. But what a beautiful company Cocoa Mats are. If you want nice mats for your car, don't even think of doing anything else. These things are just awesome. Anyway, back to the Speedster. So it's all very, very true to the original in terms of everything, and that is what makes it really, really cool. Let's have a look inside the back. So, of course, you have a flat 4-cylinder engine with twin carbs, air-cooled, as was the original Speedsters and Beetles. And it is very much the sound and feel of what an original Speedster would have, and that's lovely. It's also something you can maintain with duct tape and a hammer, so it's not, you know, not overly complicated to drive, and works very well. This one, I don't know, 1.6 liter, something like that, runs pretty great, and is a joy to putz around. You know, air-cooled rear-engine stuff was outside the box even back then, because it's so ass-heavy, it's just going to have all kinds of trouble keeping itself on the on the road, and you know, just did that rear end. The way they did it was weight distribution and other stuff in order to make it come you know, become a nice balanced car. Front, you know, nice. You got your battery there, that helps with the weight. You got your fuel up there, which also helps with the weight. And that was the brilliance of Porsche's rear engine air-cooled engineering. He moved enough stuff to the front and of course the passenger in the middle to make the thing very, very well balanced, and that's why they had such great success in racing. But again, very, very simple, very easy to look after, and beautiful to look at. Love the little mirrors. The seats fixed back. You know, again, the windshield was built to be removed completely for racing, just make it real easy to do. And of course, people did do that. So, see these little holes in the oh, Lord. All right. You know, I'm going to go easy on Marty. There he is. He's got his ridiculous red shoes on, but at least he doesn't look like a clown when it's cold weather out. Anyway, so these little guys will fit these window side curtain things. That was all done for weight and, of course, to keep the things inexpensive. I think they were under $3,000 back then, which was less than the English cars it was competing with. Anyway, let's fire this thing up. The way that thing runs, just absolutely perfect. You can see we got video gauges, very, very cool. Just what you need. You got your miles per hour, you got your tach, you got your temp, and your fuel, and that's it. Beautiful little banjo steering wheel, lovely, sporty, nice. You got your headlights here. Here's your key switch. This is your wiper switch. Here's another emblem. These were easier to put on because it was a nice flat surface, so I had fun with those. Piece of cake. And of course your little 4-speed shifter down here. But you know, again, all Beetle, but very true and faithful to the original. Right down to the pedals coming off the floor. And what a cool feeling. I mean, you can tell that the, God, I didn't check to see which is reverse in this thing. God, I can't remember if it's over and up, if it's, no, Jesus, all right, hang on. All right, we're never gonna find reverse. I'm gonna have to put this in, it's been a long time since I drove a Beetle. Oh, Lord, where is it? Down and back? There we go. All right. But you've got this awesome little raked windshield. I mean, it just feels sporty as hell. The antithesis of a Beetle, truly. You get first? Yeah, I think so. No power steering, obviously, but you don't need it. It's very light up front, very responsive. There we go. And I tell you what, man, there's just nothing more fun to drive than this car. There really isn't. It's an absolute incredible feeling. Except for the fact that you will be killed if something hits you. Shifting left-handed, it's virtually impossible. Making a botch of this. Oh, there's popping out of gear. There's 3 in second. All right, I've got to hold this. Now I can't, because then I can't hold the wheel. This is why I need help. And let's see if I can do this properly. All right, I think I'm in first. We'll see if I can get through the gears without making an absolute botch of it. But anyway, this is what makes this car so much fun to drive. You're completely open to the world. You've got this lovely little small windshield in front of you. You feel raked back and sporty, and you just feel like, you know, you're one with car and machine as you drive down the road in between all of this modern crap. What an amazing amount of fun this would be to run on the back roads. There we go, now I'm getting it. Oh, we got turn signals. It's modern. The popping and sputtering from the Beetle motor. You know, it's just, again, all very true to the original. I love it. Not really fast. I suppose you could put like a turbo Subaru motor in it if you wanted to fly, or even a real hot rod V-dub motor, but who needs it? This is just fun to do the way it is. Very neat piece, a lot of fun to drive. You know, maybe you could start selling seashells, and if you're good enough at it, you can have a little collection of Porsches, and we just got him an Aston Martin as well, so Larry's doing just fine selling conch to people. Anyway, there it is. We really appreciate you having a look at this thing, and I'll come back with something fun next week. Thanks again, and take care.